Hello, and today we'll continue with Chapter 1 with Nerus. Warm orange light falls upon Lisa as she walks on the edge of an earthen road. She looks over the fences made out of iron wires going through rows of thick sticks toward the cows lazily chewing grass in its pastures. It feels to her like this is the first time she has seen such a creature. That's ridiculous, of course, since cows manage to make it through the cataclysm. There is strife in numbers, she thinks, even if you are raised as livestock. Humanity surely survived thanks to being such a numerous, widespread species too. But in their case, is it such a good thing they survived? Is it not sad that they live through the world's end only to continue being livestock? Maybe that is the only way they can exist in this world. Pathetic as it might be, everything has a role to play. The sound of dry leaves being crushed alerts her that someone is behind her now. Alicia cautiously turns around, trying to get a look. She is unable to make out the stranger's shape. Is that her brother? No, this doesn't feel like him. Then maybe Obley? No, who is that? He had to be Bitey. He looks much smaller than she remembers, but who else could it be? She still isn't certain, so she looks forward and keeps walking. If it is Bitey, he might get irritated and ask her why she's ignoring him. But did Bitey ever do that? The steps behind her progressively get closer. Alicia starts wondering if she made a mistake in ignoring the stranger. She doesn't know why, but she knows she shouldn't make this person suspicious. But confronting them isn't a good idea either. After some reflection, Alicia decides to stop and sit by the fence. She observes as a person following her stops on his tracks. Now he seems to be the one hesitating. This reminds her of something. Yes, she realizes now where she is. She predicts the stranger will now walk up to her and place his hand on her shoulder. As expected, he soon starts approaching her again. But then she blinks, and when she opens her eyes again, she finds herself at a completely different place. The forest that passes that person, all of it is gone. Instead, she's greeted by a red sofa and a fancy-looking table. Alicia realizes she's sitting on a chair. For an instant, she thinks this is the study Maggie let them borrow, but that's wrong. She has never been here, not in reality. But as she looks around, she recognizes the room nevertheless. The position of the furniture, the windows, and the single door is lit up, so she's able to see it all clearly now, but she remembers this room from the dream she had her first night in the Abbey. With one other difference, the bed has been replaced with a sofa, table, and chair. Alicia gets up and instinctively walks up to the window. It's completely dark outside except for something she doesn't make sense of. A wing of an unnatural color floats in the darkness. Lisa wonders if this is some sort of trick. While they told her there exist fluorescent materials that glow in the dark. Perhaps someone painted the wall facing the window with one such material. But she realizes how nonsensical that is. The light that makes it out through the glass doesn't reach anything like a hallway or a wall outside. Because they don't exist, all that is out there is void in that wing. She is now noticing how the wing seems to dance, like flames contracting and expanding as the laws of defying energy keeping them alive fluctuates. Is that another wing she sees far off to the side? Lisa tries her best to get a look, but all she manages to do is hit her head against the flame. She could try to stick her head out, but she doesn't feel ready to find out what happens as she opens this window, so she steps away for the time being. When Lisa turns around, she notices something new. Something is sitting on the sofa. She can't quite make out its shape. Or does it lack one? As if to answer her question, the being flashes for a moment, turning to the nun that once guided her here before breaking apart again. She has to admit that now that she sees it like this, she doesn't feel nearly as intimidated. Something was disturbing as that nun, like looking at someone wearing a rubber mask that doesn't fit them. She sits in the chair again and waits for the being to speak. His voice comes out as an amalgamation of many others, masculine and feminine. Some of them sound more like bellowing animals. And mixed with all of them, she could hear herself. I thank the Herald for this opportunity. I have been asleep for so long. The Herald. You know him, don't you? What do you want from me? That's why you're here, aren't you? I don't want. I need. I need my son back. Your son? It's been so long. I looked over him, protected him. He knew I was there even he couldn't see. I provided him with guidance. The being's form, if it could be called that, begins to shake. There was still hope for him, but then came those damn safe-sitters and their treacherous leader. But how long must that child suffer before they are satisfied? The truth is that it will never end, not without me. We've waited for the longest time, me and my servants. The time to act is very near. I don't get it. Safe-sitters, servants. And why is your son suffering? He suffers because he loves you. It hurts when your essence is removed, when you transform into something you were never meant to be. It hurts that no matter what he does, how much power he wields, he's helpless to come to your aid. I don't know the meaning of pain, but when I saw his tears, I knew he deserved better. Elisa's eyebrows twitch, and for an instant she feels as if she's floating. But she's still there, sitting, talking to the shadow. You will help us. But I don't understand. The unknown being goes silent. A chill goes down Elisa's spine. Is something else about to happen? Hello? I hadn't noticed. It seems we have an uninvited guest. I remember you. What form the creature possesses itself? Elisa can't tell, but she thinks it's looking somewhere else now. And she is right. It is looking at me. This is impressive. It's been 1,000 years, but I still did not expect you to be able to peek this deep into someone's mind. I trust my home is treating you well. I will not describe it as hospitable. A mass of flesh lunging to try to devour me is not my idea of a proper greeting. Forgive them. They are not used to foreign bodies. Out there, we are all kind of melded together. They just want you to join them. The creature takes its place to inspect me. I cannot help but roll my eyes at its attempt at showing concern. Finally, it speaks again. Will you believe me if I told you even here it's been a problem? Not for me, as I lack a physical form, but for Knock, yes, in fact, I witnessed it. Oh, don't tell me he consumed human flesh. No, he found a way to keep those impulses under control. But I will spare you the details, as I would rather not recall them. Well, as long as he is behaving himself. What about you? Can you say you have been behaving? I believe so. Truly? Then why don't you leave the girl alone? I may not know the future, but I don't need to in order to see this will end badly. This is the only path we have. You should already know that well. If you don't, then ask yourself why you got trapped out there. I lowered my head, carefully considering his words. I don't like taking advice from these monsters, but they seem to know something I don't, so perhaps I should lend their words an ear. Deep down I know he's right. It is undeniable. A greater force has been guiding us down this path without an apparent way out. But it is truly inescapable as it seems. The real question is if they are trying to help or deceive me. In any case, it's good to see you doing well. Now it's time to resume our script. At first you'll be watching our performance until you turn to enter the stage. Of course, it is not as if there was anything else to do here. Elisa attempts to speak and wave her hands in front of the creature, and that is when she realizes the words are coming out. A heavy air suddenly settles inside the room. Elisa's vision becomes blurry, and her temples feel as if they were throbbing in a painless headache. Her eyelids slowly close and then shoots open. She isn't in the room anymore. Elisa floats in the void of space. Countless suns surround her from every direction. Whenever her eyes trail off too far away, there is a promise of life. As she rotates in place, something else enters her field of view. 3 stars travel across a single orbit as if they were the 3 tips of a rotating triangle. The world around them is painted with distorted colors. The 3 stars dance in place like 3 black stains in a tainted canvas of space. Elisa opened her eyes, wondering how many years these dreams will save off her lifespan. She started getting off the bed when she noticed Buddy sitting on his, one leg still on the mattress and his arm resting on it. He was looking at the door. "Good morning, Buddy. Did you sleep?" "Of course. Were you having more strange dreams? Were you making quite the stir up until just a second ago?" "Yes, but I think the stress is getting to me. Is something on your mind?" "I'm hungry." The crocodile grunted as he made an effort to get up from the bed. He raised his arms on a long stretch. Elisa could have sworn she heard his bones popping into place. "They should serve breakfast soon. Let's go then." The refectory was bursting with monks, obliviously bantering and eating their meals as usual. The non-monks were pleased to see the investigators joining them, doing breakfast too. Frank offered Alicia a salad with pieces of what seemed to be a greenish slime-like vegetable on it. She declined politely. "I'm curious. What are things like at Knox Church? This abbey seems relaxed compared to the Urge." "What do you mean?" "At Urge Church, we would usually do either community service or attend to ill or injured people. Sometimes we would get hunters who got hurt in action and that no one else could deal. Especially back in the day when abominations would pop around the capital every once in a while. This place instead feels like a fancy school. As far as I can tell, you don't even engage in traditional worship anymore. Although, I suppose working at the scriptorium can be a form of worship in itself. Knox Church is more traditional for sure. It needs to be. Our task is one that inherently requires secrecy. Our own rituals haven't evolved much over time, and divulging the church's secrets is still seen as a serious offense. What do you do if someone divulges these secrets? That is a secret too. Elisa nodded and drank some water. So what, do you guys have praying sessions? Do you attend Mass? Indeed. It's similar to how secluded religious institutions worked in the old world. We usually aren't allowed out without a reason too. They said Smith's Church is one of the few places where you can find a monk if you're lucky. This all makes me so relieved I left the family. Even you would become your uncle if you had to live like this, yes? It does have its benefits. The library there dwarfs even the one in this church. There is so much knowledge you'd be unable to find anywhere else in this world. Yes, the Lord spent the entire time reading about mythology when he were there. If it was allowed, I would have brought some books with me. The murmur in the refectory died down as more monks turned their heads towards the source of the sound. Even the remaining abbots and the hunters escorted them, lit with curiosity. Santiago had gotten up from his table and was hitting his glass with a spoon. Attention, please. I have an announcement to make. What is now? Today's usual activities are cancelled. Instead, you are all summoned to the chapter house after breakfast. And I do mean all of you. Be at ease, honorable abbots, for most of our guards are stationed at the church so that you will be safe. Any monk that tries to skip this will receive punishment yet to be decided. That is all. The apostle sat back down and started whispering something to the other members of his inner circle. Similarly, the monks resumed their talk, now even more lively than before. Since a common suspicion emerged, they had caught the culprit behind the recent incidents. Interesting. Did they catch the killer? But then, why would we be summoned? Wouldn't the police deal with it? Frank and our lawyers turned the body. The crocodile scratched his chin and shrugged. We'll find out soon enough. The investigators stepped into a large octagonal room with 7 large stained glass windows. Santiago stood on a corner opposite the entrance, arms crossed and accompanied by 2 policemen. There were rows of chairs that had been laid out for the monks to use, with a gap in the middle of the formation so they wouldn't obstruct the entrance and provide access to the entire room. Buddy and Lisa managed to find 2 free seats on the front row, much to the annoyance of the monk behind Buddy. Santiago gave a cursory look to everyone present. Buddy and Lisa were there on the front row as he had expected, and so were the others from William's inner circle in Remigio. The abbots had been given their spots behind the possum and alongside the hunters. His guards were all stationed where he had ordered. He gave a few satisfied nods and cleared his throat before asking everyone to be silent. Thank you for coming, everyone. I apologize for summoning you on such short notice, but I assure you it is for a good reason. Bonnie, don't you think Santiago looks different today? Interesting, right? Let's pay attention. I don't believe I need to remind all of you of the stories of tragedies that have besieged our peaceful abbey. As many of you correctly guessed, that is the reason I summoned you here today. We will put a stop to these tragedies right now. To its end, we will be holding a trial. Ben raised his slimy hand, and Santiago gestured to him. Excuse me, Santiago, but does a trial need a defendant? We still don't know who the killer is. Obviously, I wouldn't have summoned everyone without a suspect. So you know? Yes. The monks made a racket as they started speculating between each other. Santiago once again asked for silence. Once the order was rested, the possum raised a hand to his chest and, with the highest quality smirk, pointed pointed his fingers at one of the people sitting on the front row. Let's not keep everyone waiting any longer. Stand up, Remigio. What? I'm accusing you. You're the one behind these killings. The hell are you on, Santiago? Is this a game for you? I can't believe you called us here just to waste our time. The chapter house was again filled with whispering, but this time the possum didn't wait for them to calm down. You may think I'm an idiot, Remigio, but you're sorely mistaken. First of all, I have a confession to make. The night before Giorgio was murdered, I noticed my master key was missing. At the time, I thought I had forgotten it somewhere, but recent events made me consider the possibility that it was stolen instead. Tell me, Remigio, do you recognize this? At the sound, Santiago snapped his fingers. One of the guards stepped closer, pushing what looked like a kitchen cart with him. Remigio furrowed his eyebrows, when he noticed the items on it. Isn't that Giorgio's lamp? Is that the key? Santiago held up the plastic bag that had the small metallic key inside. It was a master key. While you were doing your night shift last night, I ordered my guards to carefully inspect your cell. Yesterday, the detectives came to me with an interesting idea that Giorgio went to William's study to retrieve a certain item that used to belong to him. I won't be speaking about the item in question. It is not relevant. But for those not aware, William hid this item inside a secret safe in his study. If we follow that path of logic, then we and the staff are the obvious suspects. All of us, except for Maggie, knew about the safe as we were here back when it was installed. But there was someone else who was close to William and wasn't here by the time. Someone who, unlike us and the staff, doesn't enjoy the privilege of a master key. Someone who would be interested in obtaining one if they decided to commit murder in this abbey. So I decided to have that person's belongings checked, and lo and behold, it was where I suspected. Are you taking this seriously now? Stand up, Remigio, and face me. The vampire clicked his tongue, got up, and walked next to Santiago. Their eyes locked together for an instant, but Remigio quickly turned his attention to the master key. So he claimed I stole this key. He uses it to commit the crime, correct? You're so naive, Santiago. Excuse me? You're the only one who can make up stories based on circumstantial evidence. How about this? You are the killer and planted this key in my cell in an attempt to frame me. Or maybe you are innocent and someone else in the staff hid their key in my cell to trick you after they noticed you lost yours. Then someone else, be it me or one of my trusted coworkers, framing you. Is that it? Exactly. Besides, do you forget that a church key is also still missing? Giorgio's murder was possible with that key alone, since the only doors that get locked at night are the two entrances to the church. You have nothing against me. Remigio declared his last sentence with confidence, and yet Santiago couldn't help but let out a chuckle. The vampire glared at him, eyes filled with rage. What's so funny? Nothing. I do hope that you come up with a better defense, and soon. Santiago placed the key on the cart and then turned to one specific person in the audience. He pointed his finger at him. Mr. Detective, please step forward. Santiago signaled toward the spot between him and the vampire. A calm smile on his face brought his step into the spotlight. I take it you want me to testify? Yes, you will tell us exactly what happened before Giorgio died. If I'm right, then an interesting detail will come to light. This is what the trial was for. To go over each point of Remigio's defense and question him. Monty smiled because he was finally understanding what Tom had told him yesterday. He thought that the Santiago from the tale was a thing from the past, but that was wrong. The apostle had merely lost the master helping him aim. He still would shoot without a second thought once he found his mark. A seat was set aside from the main group in the abbots for Remigio. Marty stood in the middle of the room narrating the events that led up to Giorgio's murder. Santiago oversaw everything with a confident smile and cold eyes. The police had neglected to investigate this case for a week, and despite his best efforts, Body had failed to produce conclusive evidence. Santiago was certain he was on the right track, but he doubted that by now, even a police investigation would be enough to take this case to court. The killer had been very careful so far, as it had plenty of time to clear up any evidence he could have left behind. Body's theory about the missing file could still work, but there was a big hurdle that needed to be cleared first: the Abbots denying knowing about William's secret. There was no other conceivable reason for Giorgio to sneak into William's study, but as long as they denied this possibility, it wouldn't hold water in court. But the Abbots only didn't want the secrets exposed. William had been the same way, so Santiago understood. If they saw that the truth could be exposed without revealing their secret, then Santiago could still win them over to his side. Only the admission that Giorgio had been lured into the church by Remigio was needed. That way, justice would be served and the Abbots could have their way, and the apostle would be able to salvage his career after this fiasco was over. Will would never be there to bail him out again. The first step was to take that annoying church key out of the equation. Santiago had no idea where it could be, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was showing that there was a reason the culprit needed specifically a master key to commit the murder. Only the two witnesses at the crime scene that night could prove this. There had to be something there. And indeed there was. Then, when I cut up to Alicia, I heard, "Stop." Now that's interesting. What about you? Do you hear the door unlock? Santiago looked at Alicia. Yes, I remember that. Isn't that strange? Remigio just mentioned that at night the only doors that get locked are the main and back entrances. You must be remembering wrong then. I don't think so. It was dark and quiet back then. How could we confuse the sound of the door being unlocked for anything else? But why would the door be locked? That's enough, you two. If both of them were so sure, Santiago would believe them. And in that case, Santiago looked at the lamp on top of the cart. I had been suspected there as a trick to Giorgio's murder. A trick? There was another thing about the crime scene that didn't make sense, remember? The culprit, despite knowing of the safe's location, made a mess out of the study. And isn't it strange? It's almost as if you weren't even trying to hide you were there. For the seven's sake, Santiago. Santiago brought one hand to his chin and started walking in circles around Body. The crocodile stared at him with an expectant look. He needed to consider his next words carefully. What was the meaning behind the study's state at the time of the crime? If Remigio stole the master key as well as the two church keys, would he still have had access to the church after giving Giorgio one of them? More importantly, he would have had access to the key box away from Amelia's prying eyes. It would have been possible for Remigio to mess with the study, get out, and use one of Amelia's keys to lock the study before returning the key. In that case, he must have given Giorgio the master key for him to enter the study, which means he had been waiting in the hallway. The purpose of this mess in the study was to make it seem like he had been inside the entire time and confuse the investigators. After killing Giorgio, he swapped the master key with a church key to hide its involvement with the crime. It almost have been about tactical advantage. Having a master key would have made any future crime much easier. For instance, a closed room in a dormitory can easily be cracked open, eliminating the need for other keys without creating suspicion. Remigio had gotten rid of the second church key by now. He probably had planned to return Santiago's master key later, but place it somewhere he could have lost it. That way he would have completed the illusion that no master key had been utilized. And that is what the discrepancy the good detective Vincent tells us. What do you think, everyone? Remigio hit the armrest of his chair and effectively bared his fangs. This is absurd, Santiago. How far are you planning to take this? How could I have been waiting in the hallway? Maybe I could have hidden from Giorgio, sure. But would the detective have seen me enter the study? He had a lamp, remember? Santiago chuckled as he walked up to the cart and stole his back to the audience. But his gaze was locked on the snarling vampire. Tell me, Remigio, what do you think Giorgio did after he entered the study? If he was going to look for something, naturally he would place his lamp down somewhere it wouldn't get in the way. Like the desk, for example. In this case, his body would be blocking the light, providing you with the opening you needed to infiltrate the study unnoticed. Remigio looked down, clenched his teeth. He was starting to notice that even if he argued back, it might not help him. The eyes of the monks and the abbots were growing sharper by the minute. If he wasn't careful with his words, he would only dig his grave deeper. Bonte, for his part, nodded with an amused smile. I admit that does sound likely, yes. Besides, we were talking to each other about it at that time. It would have been possible for someone to sneak in right under our noses. I see. You can return to your seat for now, Detective. Let's move on to the next topic. Was any member of the Inner Circle capable of committing the crimes? To answer this question, we will need to talk about William's murder first. Come here, Ben. Me? Santiago nodded, and the fire got up. He waddled to the center of the room, suddenly looking twice as slimy. I already know what you told the detectives, Ben, but please repeat your testimony for everyone else present. Ben's testimony suggested no suspicious movement took place in the staff's dormitory until after Santiago went to sleep. The next person who shouldn't have been there entered the dormitory and Ben unknowingly heard William being murdered. If this was true, then it immediately proved no one in William's circle was the killer. It was also known that before Giorgio's murder, only the detectives and the hunters had used the doors to move in and out of the dormitory, while Lois had seen his window as a fitting replacement. In other words, the monks' dormitory was a closed room for the staff, which they couldn't have escaped to commit Giorgio's murder. That's bullshit, Ben. How can you be so sure no one else left or entered the dormitory? Again, because of a defect with my I don't care about that. I'm saying you are exaggerating to give everyone else alibis. Calm down, Remigio. I would concede one point. We shouldn't trust Ben's words alone. Even his hearing is exceptional, he is still only human and thus prone to mistakes. Yes, that's right. I'm glad you started to see reason. That's why I believe we should compare it to the testimony of others to verify his reliability. What? You can return to your seat, Ben. I'll always later. Come forward. How can we help? We need to test if Ben's testimony was reliable. We know he heard the investigators leave, but that wasn't all that happened in the monks' dormitory that night. Namely, he said he heard something loud outside and a scream, as well as a strange noise on the upper floor. I see. Yes, he was probably talking about me going outside that night. He probably heard me jump from the window and climb back up later. And the scream was poor Josue's. Will you say the facts line up with Ben's testimony? It wouldn't have been possible for him to falsify it. I don't see anything inconsistent. It wouldn't have been hard for him to figure out that the detectives left the dormitory at some point during the night and pretend he heard it. But I don't know how he could have guessed everything else, or he lied about his sense of hearing. I think the same. I don't think he's trying to trick us about the others' alibis either. I mean, we still guarded the hallway all night, and only the investigators came down. How could the staff have escaped their cells? Jumping too? That's impossible. The two of them were allowed to return to their seat. Santiago looked at Remigio, who by now was looking down at the floor as he bit his index finger. Anything left to say, Santiago? Anything. You're crazy, Santiago. As I said, the key had to be planted on my cell. I don't know anything about it. Can you prove it? Santiago walked up to the vampire with a challenging glare. The vampire got up, fist clenched and shaking. How did someone unlock and then lock your cell from the outside while leaving the master key inside? Not even once did you mention you left the door unlocked, so don't try to use that excuse now. Although, even if you did, it's your word against the guards. So, why? Why did you suggest I would do all of this? A motive, stupid. You've been going on and on about me being the killer, but I don't have anything to gain and everything to lose by doing this. I'm blessed, remember, I'm set for life. Why would I throw it all away? To kill some guys that don't have many years left anyway? To tell you the truth, I can't be certain, but I do have a theory. You said you used to have a good relationship with the abbot before, well, Remigio, but that changed. Did something happen to make you start resenting him? Or maybe not just him, but the other abbots in general. Could it be? Stop 1 second, Remigio. Yes, I remember now. I did always think that name sounded familiar. Do you know him, Diego? I suppose you forgot as well. During the old fire, Abbott had a distant relative by that name. What is this about the former fire Abbott? Was he not the one who died in the accident? Yes. I also seem to recall his wife died too. His children went missing. What happened again? Are you kidding me? Don't play dumb, Diego. It wasn't an accident. You got rid of them because you had dirt on you. Just like you got rid of William. Oh my. I'm not the one with the motive to kill anyone here. You are. You're afraid William will out you, so you murder him too. Calm down, Remigio. Hunching over and with a wild snarl, Remigio lunged at Diego. But before he could get anywhere near his prey, the vampire was stopped by a cold sensation on his neck. Santiago stood in his way, sword drawn and pointed at his throat. The vampire let out a howl before slumping over. His shoulders deflated. He took a couple of steps back and fell on his chair. After an instant, the possum seized his sword and looked at the audience. That is all, everyone. You are dismissed. I will request the abbots to stay for just a little longer. I need to have a word with you. And guards, take the vampire away. After the trial was over, Bonnie and Lisa exited the church and walked toward the garden to get away from the monks. Lisa was still processing what had just happened, but Bonnie looked serene as ever. Lisa couldn't even begin to guessing what that expression meant. It was bothering her a little. I have to admit that I'm surprised. I didn't think Santiago had it in him to pull that off. Was it that unexpected? He might have felt lost after William's sudden passing, but he still is a ruthless man that got where he is by getting his hands dirty. You need to be more patient with people, Lisa. One day you'll get caught off guard because of that attitude. Well, what now? Do we go talk with Maggie, or do we head straight home? It's not time to head home yet. But Remigio was arrested. Oh, well, Lisa, don't tell me you actually think he did it. Do you? After the trial was over, Marty and Elisa exited the church and walked towards the garden to get away from the monks. Elisa was still processing what had just happened, but Marty looked serene as ever. Elisa couldn't even begin guessing what that expression meant. It was bothering her a little. I have to admit that I'm surprised. I didn't think Santiago had it in him to pull that off. Was it that unexpected? He might have felt lost after William's sudden passing, but he still is a ruthless man, not out where he is by getting his hands dirty. You need to be more patient with people, Elisa. One day, you'll get caught off guard because of that attitude. Well, what now? Do we go talk to Mackie, or do we head straight home? It's not time to head home yet. But Remigio was arrested. Oh, Elisa, don't tell me you actually think he did it. You do, don't you? You can be so naive sometimes. It's kind of cute. The crocodile laughed and hugged the hybrid. She resigned herself to fate and waited for him to let go of her. Okay. What the hell is it then? Is it really one of the abbots? By now, I can make an educated guess, but proving it is going to be a different matter. We can't afford to make a spectacle like Santiago's to gain the abbot's favor, so for now we'll stick to the plan. So we'll still follow them into the cell? Marty nodded. Elisa couldn't help but think this was strange. If he was suspecting someone in particular, why would he still be so secretive? Knowing the crocodile, this was all like a game to him. But no matter how entertaining it might be, she trusted him to never do something that could endanger her life. With that in mind, it wasn't hard to deduce what he thought. Even if you don't know who the culprit is, you are safe. That was all it could mean. But whether he thought this because of Remigio's arrest or some other reason, she couldn't tell. She needed to figure it out. This does remind me. Marty, can I play your games all you want? But I can play your games all you want, but there's something I can't stop thinking about. Could you tell me at least that? It probably doesn't have much to do with the case, but I'm curious. What is it? The letter Alois told you. Suppose I could tell you that much. It was a love letter. Huh? Why would he be so secretive about that? You see, by this side he scratched his head, looking for the right words for what he was about to communicate. In the end, he settled on just saying it as it was. After looking around, the crocodile stepped closer and spoke in whispers. There's a good reason he couldn't let anyone know about that letter. I can't imagine how many rules of his tricks he must have broken. If my uncle ever catches wind of it, he might get a stroke. You see, the letter was signed by Nock himself. Huh? I thought he was lying when I first saw it, but when he sold me that necklace, well, not even my uncle had a gem that size gifted to him. That isn't something you give to a subordinate, but to somebody you love. I bet it was Nock was thinking. I don't even know what this means. Is this even allowed? There's no precedent, but a monk trying to meet with Nock is an unforgivable violation of the church's rules. Of course, with Nock on his side, it would be harder to settle this matter just by punishing Alois. I fear he doesn't want anyone finding out, just to eliminate all possible trouble, thus the secrecy. Guess we shouldn't tell anyone about this either. Well, that's what I was curious about. What now? Yesterday, Maggie agreed to let us into the farm-off. The Abbots and the Nock boys are coming with us. Them too? After everything that happened, Alvaro wants them to stay away from here for a while. I see. Should we go down to the village then? Of course, let's go get our belongings. Marty holding a suitcase and Elisa with her backpack on her shoulders, they unceremoniously walked out of the abbey, the gigantic double doors closed behind them. The hybrid didn't bother looking back. Between this and her childhood, she felt like she had her fill with churches. Part of her couldn't wait to go back to the city, get home, and relax. Between her last trip and this, she was exhausted. The relief of leaving the abbey didn't last long, however. They made it past the long path that descended from the mountain to large crop fields cut in the middle by the road and into the town. There was no one outside, but it didn't take long for them to realize lots of eyes were on them regardless. Lisa walked closer to the crocodile, looking at the nearby buildings out of the corner of her eye. I'm seeing a lot of faces on the windows. I don't like this. Stay near me. They didn't make it too deep into the village before a human peasant came out from behind one of the buildings ahead of them, a large pitchfork on his hands. Lisa stepped behind Buddy, but then she realized there were now people behind them too. She glared at them, but no words could make it out of her throat. Excuse me, gentlemen. We were making our way out of town. I would suggest you step out of our way. I promise there would be no trouble that way. Set your trap, demon. You're not making it out here alive, demon. He came after the abbey burned, and then more people kept dying. You're the one behind it all, demon. I see how it is. At least hide in that barrel over there. It's useless trying to reason with these people. The suitcase hit the dirty ground with a thud. Buddy cracked his knuckles, produced a sound akin to thunder, and started walking toward the peasant, who suddenly seemed to be lacking courage. But before the situation could escalate any further, someone shouted their way. The investigators immediately recognized his voice. Step back, citizen. The bird stepped between the peasant and the crocodile, his arms outstretched, and guarded a cowering man. You're done. Step back, citizen. The bird stepped between the peasant and the crocodile, his arms outstretched and guarding a cowering man. You have done a fine job cornering the demon, but this is too much for you to handle. Ah, Mr. Bernardo. Bernardo took out a pair of handcuffs and swiftly restrained Buddy with them. He sighed, wiped his forehead, and looked at the human man. There were tears of admiration in his eyes. Everything is well now. I'll take the demon with me to make sure he's properly exercised and can leave the rest to me. Thank you so much, sir. I was so afraid for my life when the beast charged at me. Understandable. He pulled from Buddy's cuffs. The crocodile's face was completely stoic. Let's get going, beast. Wait, what about the girl? She seems to be just a hostage. Let her come with me as well. I'll make sure it's safe to release her. And I'll be taking this. Who knows what the demon is hiding? Bernardo said as he picked the suitcase off the ground. Thank you, Bernardo, for whatever that was. Don't even mention it. Bernardo removed the handcuffs from Buddy and carelessly tossed them onto the table. They let you keep those. I always kept an extra pair at home for when I'm off duty. The locals can get very rowdy. But please don't resent them. They are very impressible compared to city folk. And they are paid by the church to provide them with meat and part of their crops, so the recent news has them very agitated. I'm concerned that they'll cause trouble when we try to get to the harbor. I'll escort you there, don't worry. Bernardo walked to the adjacent room and returned with a plate full of some sort of small sandwiches packed with greens and meat. Buddy let out a surprised exclamation and immediately started digging in. Elisa grabbed a single one and started eating it bit by bit. "There's more in the kitchen, so eat to your heart's content." Buddy said something with his mouth full, but neither Bernardo nor Elisa understood him. He swallowed and tried again. "It's like you were expecting guests here. I figured it would be a good moment to use up the food I had laying around. I won't be staying here for much longer." The crocodile perked up. "Did you consider my offer?" "I did. I think I will accept it." "So you did lose your job?" "It's not a big deal. It's not the first time it's happened." Despite his words, a bearded vulture couldn't contain the long sigh that raced from his chest. "Really? With how diligent you seem to be, I would guess your bosses so far loves you. Sometimes the due process is interrupted because of some delicacy or politics getting in the way. As with this one, I'm convinced the Abbots have someone in the church relaying their orders to the island's police. Yesterday my boss admitted that they didn't want this investigated until recently. But yes, cases like this are surprisingly common, and I often find myself stuck between fulfilling my duty and doing what is expected of me." "I see." Elisa noticed that Bernardo had been staring at her with a searching look. He got up from his seat and walked behind the harbor woman, placing his feathery hands on her shoulders. "What are you doing?" "You seem rather tense, Elisa. That's not good." His fingers passed through her hair before gathering it and tying it into a knot. He started massaging her shoulders, first with his hands and then with his elbows. Elisa's awkwardness melted away as waves of pleasant tingling and relaxation washed over her. She closed her eyes and, with a pleasant hum, let the bird work on her shoulders, necks, temples, and arms. At some point she leaned forward to let him work on her back as well. Body looked at the scene with an expression that was hard to read. "I didn't know you were a massagist. I trained myself to help my comrades relax. You'd be surprised how many loyal friends I made this way." Bernardo nodded, chest sticking out with pride for his handiwork. He untied Elisa's hair, and his red eyes turned to Buddy. "Your turn now. Please take off that coat and lay down on the bed. Crocodiles have very rough skin, so this will be more difficult." "Huh?" A few minutes later, Buddy was lying face down on the bed, hugging the pillow tightly against his face and with his eyes closed. Bernardo was straddling on top of him, tirelessly working to undo the decades of tension that had become knots in his back. Elisa was eating another one of the tiny sandwiches. She didn't feel hungry, but these little things tasted good and gave her a homey feeling. Meanwhile, Bernardo asked Elisa about how the case was going, so she explained what had happened that morning. "I see. Then you are still chasing after the Abbots." "That's the plan, yes." "Do you know what Buddy is thinking?" "No, I believe he must have a good reason to think Remigio's not the culprit. For what you told me, Santiago made very convincing arguments, so perhaps Buddy noticed an oversight he made. Something you can't explain with his theory, or perhaps a contradiction." "I can think of a few things in that case. The glove of that missing book, the location of William's file. But what could it all add up to?" "Man, I feel 10 years younger. Your fingers are magic, let me tell you." "Oh, you exaggerate. Anyway, shouldn't the Abbots be descending the mountain by now?" "That's true. Shall we head out now?" Elisa sighed with relief when they got to the harbor. It had been long since she last had been so glad to feel the salty smell of the sea invading her nostrils. The farmhouse was dark, and the Abbots were already boarding it. Buddy turned to Bernardo, hands inside his pockets. "Well, this is it. Unfortunately, Maggie couldn't make arrangements to get you on the ship, so you'll have to stay here for now, Bernardo. I expected as such. But that doesn't mean I didn't get you any means of transportation. Megan will come to pick you up later today, so look out for any knocking on your door. Is that so? I'll keep it in mind then. And, Buddy seemed to suddenly lose his steam, twiddling his thumbs as he looked down at his feet. Bernardo smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and pushed him toward the ship. The case still isn't over, is it? Right. I'll see you later then. Until later, Bernardo. With those parting words, the investigators walked toward the farm-off. Near the boarding bridge was Santiago, who was overseeing who boarded the trip. There you are. I was expecting you to be here earlier. Something came up. I see that. The apostle was looking behind Buddy. He's too afraid to board the ship, but I'd like to have a word with you first, Detective. What is it? I want to apologize for my behavior towards you. If your presence was undesirable for some, you still were a fine guest of our church and deserve to be treated as such. Much water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. Still, my conduct was inappropriate. I also want to thank you. The way I handled everything related to this case was terrible. From trying to suppress the investigation to hiding important facts from you. I don't know how you feel about it, but I believe it was only because of our combined effort that we caught Wamizu. I hope William can be at peace now wherever he is. I see. You don't need to thank us, Santiago. We were just doing this for a fat paycheck Maggie promised us. But still, I do hope you do better from now on. I imagine what happened to William must have hit you hard. We'll get going now. Until next time, Santiago. Monty started climbing onto the ship. Lisa nodded Santiago's way and followed after the crocodile. I think I'll be fine until next time. After leaving their belongings in their cabin, the two investigators discussed what would come next. Expected that Abbas's quarters wouldn't be possible as long as they were holed up in them, but Buddy seemed to have an idea. While he worked on that, Elisa roamed the ship without direction, not paying attention to her surroundings except to evade the occasional seaman that passed by her. She was submerged deep into her thoughts and yet drawing a blank. It was then that she noticed Frank waving at her. Alois was nearby. Hello, Elisa. Forgive me if I'm being rude, but are you alright? Of course. I just saw you walking around with your hair hanging low and that long face. I wonder if something was wrong. Sorry. It's alright. Elisa crossed her arms over the wooden railing and looked out to the sea. It seemed like clouds were gathering. She hoped they wouldn't be hit by a storm. Nothing happened. There was just a lot in my mind. I don't know what to do with it. What do you mean? Lisa wanted to take this off her chest, and considering she probably wouldn't see him again soon, she figured Frank would fill the role of listener nicely. She remained silent for a few seconds. Frank leaned on the railing as Brown looked at her, patiently waiting. Have you ever felt like you are a burden to someone else? I can't say I have, no. Why are you asking? I'm starting to realize that that's how it is between me and Buddy. We aren't just co-workers. He raised me. He adopted me after my mother passed away. Or maybe my real father stuffed me in his arms and ran. Elisa clicked her tongue, although my real dad was also missing by then. Anyway, he's the one who originally asked Buddy to take care of me if something happened to Mom. I think they were childhood friends. They lived similar experiences, having come from blessed families and running away from home. Elisa shook her head. Anyway, I think I have been getting in his way. Between a child to raise and his line of work, I imagine he must not have had a lot of time to make his own life. Make his own life? Yes, for instance. Elisa did a gesture with her hand as she looked for the right words. For instance, pursuing a hobby or maybe having a love life? Yes, I realize Buddy doesn't have many friends anymore, or when he meets with people, it's usually very superficial. Maybe he hadn't had to invest so much time in me. Elisa. Frank had interrupted her. His smile was gone, and although he couldn't see his eyes, Elisa felt pierced by his gaze. Yet his words came out in his usual sweet tone of voice. If I have to correct the impression of Buddy, he's the kind of person that makes choices and lives with them. If he promised your father he'd take care of you, then I don't think he has regretted it a single day of his life. He already made his life and chose to include you in it. You're a burden. Oh, I figured he must want the same for you. Parents are like that. They tend to serve their lifestyle on their children without thinking. But he'd be sad if you started regretting your time together, so don't. You should show him your support if you notice he wants to make some changes to his life instead. Lisa squinted at a young monk. I think you're right. Buddy's like that. He also always behaves like he knows something you don't, even when he is just as lost as I am. That sounds like someone I know. Does Alois do that too? Him? Not at all. Alois is the kind of player that keeps a stoic poker face rather than a smug one. What about you, Frank? Me? The monk crossed his arms and hummed loudly. I don't know how to explain it in terms of a card game. Lisa chuckled and took a glance at the sea. I think I can figure it out. You're the kind of player that plays with a rigged deck. You remember the little marks and scratches each card has, and then you pretend it was all luck when you win. Hey, that's mean. It sounds like you're making me pass for some shady kind guy. I don't mean any offense. All I mean is that you are more attentive than you look. There are merits to that. You would make a fine investigator. Thanks. You sort of remind me of. She stopped herself for an instant, but finally decided to go ahead. You remind me of this dream I have every once in a while. Dream? Ever since Mom died, I had these strange dreams. Like I'm in the shoes of someone else, and there are other people that seem familiar. I have seen myself in them, and Dad, my brother, my grandmother. But a lot of times it's people I don't know. But there's one dream that stands out. Frank leaned forward a little, interest showing even through his mask. In a dark place, and there is this boy. He's blessed. He looks like a lizard, but I can't pinpoint what kind. He's not a species I know. He has these feathers. We play and have fun together. And then he gives me this sad look like he wants to say something. Or maybe he's waiting for me to realize something. I don't know. You remind me of that boy. There was silence, and then a chuckle escaped Frank's lips this time. Slowly he took his mask and removed it. He turned to Elisa, that naive joy having returned completely to him. Who knows, Elisa? Maybe the two of us have a lot in common after all. Yeah, maybe. Elisa turned to the sea again. The two of them remained there in silence for a long time. So apparently, Santiago believed that Remigio committed the murders, but Bidey is not convinced. And he even seemed to be kind of shocked that Elisa didn't question it. So, they're on the ship now, and they are still going to figure out who the murderer is, even though Santiago believes Remigio is the one who was a murderer. So, that entity that Elisa saw, it says something about it having a son or something like that, and that it was angry at the state sisters and their leader. The leader of the state sisters. And if you read the prologue for Nerus, you know that their leader is Nomino. So this, whatever this thing is, has a deep resentment towards the state sisters for whatever reason. And what they apparently did to its son, I guess. So, some things are starting to connect together. What we saw in the prologue is starting to be mentioned in this chapter, so this chapter is not like completely different from the prologue, even though it's thousands of years into the future here. And after she got back on the ship and left the island, Elisa talked to Frank, and she said she had a dream about this lizard with feathers. And you know that lizard is sex. She talked about sex. And if you remember the prologue, Sax will talk about him making new friends, and he would have to unfortunately betray them because that's what his family does, and he would be very sad because he knew that he would have to betray his friends because that's what his family wants. And Elisa told Frank that Sax was sad for some reason, but if you play the prologue, you know why. That Sax would have to abandon them. He wouldn't be there long, and he wouldn't be there as a kind of like a being that gives them hope. He was just there to trick them on his family's orders. And she seems to think that Frank is kind of similar to Sax, because Frank, he seems to be kind of sad for some reason. So okay, so we're going to see what happens on this boat in the next episode of Nerus for chapter 1. And so thank you all very much for watching. Bye.